All right. I guess one issue that has been coming up recently and has been in the papers for quite some time, which I guess hasn't gotten too much attention, but I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about it. And that is sort of policing in the United States. And so recently, I believe, um, might have been about 3 weeks ago, in early February or mid to early February, where a number of, I guess, activists and volunteers had gone to a grocery store dumpster and sort of gotten some of the food that had spoiled or was about to be spoiled due to the fact that some of the power outages that occurred during the snowstorm and blizzard that affected Portland, Oregon. And so there were a number of activists who were just gathering this food to just give away. They weren't trying to pilfer it or do any vandalism or anything like that. But um, one of the, I believe, managers for this grocery store, the name escapes me right now, but I'll probably put it in the comments or descriptions later, that or a link to the story later, that this manager called the police, and the police actually were guarding this dumpster and sort of destroying the items that some of the activists and volunteers had collected. And so they had kind of thrown some of them away and things like that and destroyed them. And it's just kind of reminiscent of the fact that this is the late stage capitalism that the United States is going through. Rather than let people eat food that would otherwise go bad or spoil, it has to be either thrown away or destroyed so that the market value of those commodities will stay the same. And it's just kind of reminiscent of the fact that, this is a horrible um, situation that we're living in, where people who will otherwise probably go hungry or maybe not even go hungry, just not have food for a day or two, um, rather than have free food, would have food that would otherwise be destroyed or thrown away. And so it's just kind of reminiscent of, I believe, Steinbeck's classic, The Grapes of Wrath, where, people would rather see produce destroyed than uh, let people have it for free, because that would intrinsically drive down the value of that commodity produce. I believe it was apples or oranges that were destroyed by the caseload in the novel, but it is something that is just, telling of the late stage capitalism that we're living in, and the corporatism that corporations have a greater deal of rights than individuals um, who don't have food. And so it's just a sad state of affairs for, you know not just those people who would otherwise gotten uh, food, but just the fact that it goes to show that our government and the agents of our government don't really care about poor people or people not having food during a uh, natural disaster. And so that just really brings up, so much disappointment in our system. But it also brings up another thing that I was brought attention to, and it was the mayor of Ithaca, New York, defunding the police and having the police, the whole department, dissolve, and having members of the department reapply for the positions in a new department, which would be named Department of Community Solutions and Public Safety. And so, excuse me, the purpose of this would to be have, like, obviously some armed police and things like that to patrol the streets and respond to violent crimes, but also to have people who are uh, community uh, community agents who would be able to respond to mental health crisis, or things that were such as mental health crisis, or things that are nonviolent in nature, in such a way of helping people who might be in distress resolve their issues without either the show of force or use of force. And, on paper, I like the idea because, I think throughout 2020, a lot of people said, saw defund the police and thought, well, obviously we need police because there's criminals out there. And so, um, what really needed to happen was that um, not a defunding of police, but a reallocation of resources, and more importantly, enacting some of the reforms that have been needed for the last, in my opinion, the last 15 to 20 years in most police departments, where violence isn't always um, the first course of action for police. You look at just some of the cases of police brutality, and it's really just issues of either mental health or substance abuse problems. Not anything that would warrant such an escalation of violence, in my opinion. But that is just to say, um, what this mayor, I believe his name is Mayor Myrick, who is, I believe, a Cornell graduate, who has this interesting idea of, having the police be not necessarily defanged, but have them better trained and better able and flexible to deal with some of these community situations, which aren't necessarily criminal offenses, but just things that are in the community. And it's an experiment, and I hope that it is, an experiment that goes well, and one that will better um, build community outreach, and have better applications than many of the programs that are run in city police departments around the country and things like that. And so, really, what I think, you know, I'm not opposed to the police. I'm just opposed to bad policing. It's much the same I said before. I'm not opposed to Joe Biden. I'm just opposed to Joe Biden's bad policies. I don't personally have anything against Joe Biden. It's just that a lot of his policies I don't agree with, and a lot of the policies of many of the police departments I don't agree with. I don't believe in always, use of force and things like that, especially in most of these situations, especially going back to the situation of, I believe, the Rochester police case with Mr. Doof, where he was basically uh, nude with a bag over his head, and handcuffed with police standing over him. And so, there has to be better ways of dealing with the public, especially those who have mental episodes and things like that in the United States and in general. Just having been to other countries, that's not um, always feasible, but it is, something that we should try to strive for better in community policing. And another thing that I wanted to take it more locally and things like that is the Indiana State House or Legislature. I don't know exactly what it's called. Has passed a bill that would end Indiana's, sorry, Illinois, Indiana, we're neighbors, but Indiana's license to carry a handgun. And so basically, what would happen is that I believe it goes into effect March 2022. So basically, a year from now, if it passes, I believe the state senate. And so, what would basically happen is that I believe excuse me, I believe that Indiana would further become a constitutional carry state, which basically will enable anyone who doesn't have a felony conviction or any criminal to own a firearm in the state of Indiana. But also, I believe Indiana would lose out in over $5.3 million in revenue, but it would probably be made up. They say that it would probably be made up in other fees and revenue, such as taxes, to the state. The police union in Indiana is opposed to this, um, which, um, being a neighbor to Indiana, I don't know what the um, blowback or consequences of such a bill like this would be. Will more criminals get guns or more law-abiding citizens get guns? And also, it brings up the dangerous question of the fact that now that there is constitutional carry in Indiana, the police have the presumption that everyone is armed and dangerous. And so it will probably be cases of people who may not be armed, being in encounters with police that end with deadly consequences for individuals who come across the police. And so that is one danger or consequence that could be inevitable, just for the sheer fact that um, of the way that policing is done, by and large, but not specifically just to Indiana or anywhere else like that. But the presumption of danger is always going to be there, to some extent, just due to the line of work. And one other issue I want to just kind of tackle with is the rise in yellow fear or scare, is the fact that there have been thousands of attacks now during the coronavirus pandemic of Asian Americans. Recently, I believe just the 2 days ago, a man in Koreatown who was of Asian descent was stabbed in pretty much downtown LA, right in Koreatown, downtown in LA. And so there really is a hysteria over the coronavirus and foreigners bringing it to our country. And so it is dangerous, but I think people have to keep in mind that obviously most Asian Americans are like fourth and fifth generation immigrants, and so not many of them are interacting with individuals who um, come from China specifically or regions of Asia that have high coronavirus outbreaks. And so it really just brings to heel that um, there really isn't anything to be afraid of from these individuals. More or less, what you have to do is just get vaccinated, get educated on what the pandemic, um, how it is being tracked and moved. And so, really, what I think needs to happen is, no new laws really need to be created. It's just the government has to be more aware of these obvious hate crimes because people are being attacked because they're Asian American, and the absurd belief that they're carrying the coronavirus, which most Asian people aren't. So don't forget, it's Brian with a Y. Political Nomad out.